yet firmly asks them to delete whatever info they have on you. And these firms, which specialize in the collection and selling of personal data, are legally obligated to comply. The app is straightforward and easy to use. You just set it and forget it, as they say. Check it out. So far, they've filed 94 data deletion requests on my behalf, 84 of which have been completed. To manually do all of that back and forth emailing on my end would have taken 63 hours, apparently. Wow. Thanks, Incogni. So unless you have 63 spare hours lying around, why not let Incogni help you the way it's helped me? Just head over to incogni.com and use the promo code JJMCC for an incredible 60% off an annual plan. Incogni, take control of your digital life today. So, to understand American food culture in the Lesser 30 era, we first need some understanding of what came before. The era of the late Industrial Revolution saw a great deal of American food start to be mass-produced in factories for the first time. This then accelerated in the aftermath of World War II, when factory production of everything became more ubiquitous in order to meet the needs of a growing population of middle-class families with aggressive appetites. Both of these highly transformative cultural eras saw Americans excited to consume foods that were affordable, convenient, and modern, whether it was things like mass-produced cookies and candies and sodas in the Victorian era, or fast food burgers, microwavable dinners, and delivery pizza in the era of the Great 30. By the time the 90s rolled around, however, Americans had started to take the cost, modernity, and convenience of their food for granted, and instead placed greater emphasis on their food's characteristics. And what do I mean by characteristics? Well, let's start by talking about flavor. The technology to flavor mass-produced foods with natural and especially artificial flavors kicked off in the late 1890s, but was initially limited to the sorts of flavors people of that time were familiar with, like chocolate and vanilla and mint and cinnamon, and some basic fruits like oranges and cherries that America had started producing in large quantities around that time. My award-winning video on candy flavors is all about this. During the Great 30 era, after World War II, several popular new flavors entered the American cultural canon, reflecting various changes to American civilization that had occurred during that time. Barbecue sauce flavored things, for instance, became popular as barbecuing grew in popularity, while American political dominion over places like Hawaii and Latin America had seen fruits like bananas, coconuts, and pineapple get more mainstream. Similar things happened during our subsequent Lesser 30 era that made other natural flavors more familiar and desired. For example, in 2018, the New York Times published a great story documenting the dramatic rise of tropical fruits into the United States in recent decades. They summarized the phenomenon this way: growth in American incomes spurred greater demand for fresh produce year-round. Immigrants brought tastes for the foods of their homelands, and in some cases, like avocados and mangoes, these tastes have become mainstream. Foreign growers took advantage of lower labor costs. International trade agreements reduced tariffs and other obstacles to imports, while many American farmers facing regulatory hurdles at home have responded by shifting production abroad, mainly to Mexico. The result of all of this has been an American public that's developed a powerful appetite for fruits, fruit juices, and fruit flavors that would have been considered obscure and intimidating in earlier eras. To grow up in the 90s, 2000s, or 2010s, by contrast, was to think nothing of guzzling down a strawberry kiwi Snapple at 7-Eleven, or a guava and white tea lemonade at Starbucks, or grabbing an acai bowl at the mall, or preparing some avocado toast in your apartment instead of making your mortgage payment. Another big variable was that chemical flavoring technology became super sophisticated during the Lesser 30. In 2009, The New Yorker published a fascinating piece about flavor science, describing how scientific advancements since the 90s, including the mapping of the human genome, have given chemists the ability to engineer astonishingly precise flavors never previously dreamed possible. From Earl Grey lavender London fog ice cream, to glazed cranberry lemon cake protein bars, to pumpkin spice everything. A legacy of Starbucks' revolutionary pumpkin spice flavored latte, which debuted in 2003. We now even have flavors that transcend things in the natural world altogether, like Purple Thunder Mountain Dew or Meta Moon Prime. Now, the increasingly elaborate buffet of flavors we get to choose from these days isn't just a byproduct of new technology or exposure to new imports. It can also be seen as a symptom of how bored and spoiled we have grown, eating the same old stuff all the time. The last 30 years have thus seen an explosion in the sale of so-called novelty foods that seek to make eating a fun new adventure in some way, or otherwise just challenge our preconceived notions of what food can even be. Examples would include Dunkaroos, Heinz Funky Purple Ketchup, and of course, the notorious KFC Double Down. Now obviously, the arms race of making food weirder and weirder can start to get a little grotesque after a while, and it's for this reason that another feature of American food culture during the Lesser 30 has been a counter-revolution against this same trend. The growing knowledge of chemical science that allowed us to engineer such imaginative designer foods has simultaneously seen us grow much more aware of the potential dangers of consuming as much artificial flavor and color as we do. If the era of the Great 30 was defined by a certain happy obliviousness to a diet of SpaghettiOs, corn dogs, and Kool-Aid, then the Lesser 30 has been equally defined by a growing anxiety and self-awareness of the potential downsides of our exciting modern foods. Not coincidentally, the modern nutrition label was introduced in 1992 at the start of this era. While there is obviously nothing new about wanting to eat foods that are healthy and nutritious, we could say that the last 30 years have witnessed a clear mainstreaming of commercial foods that explicitly opt out of the hyper-processed, ultra-engineered trend that we've been on. Instead, many food brands now go out of their way to market themselves to the public using jargon that plays up all of the things that they're not doing. Stuff like whole grain bread with no preservatives, hormone-free beef raised without steroids or antibiotics, locally sourced, pesticide-free, organic carrots, 100% juice, not from concentrate, no sugar added. This is something David Brooks talks about in one of my favorite books on the culture of the 90s, Bobos in Paradise. The degree that the consumerism of the last few decades has been able to pander to our growing worries about stuff like GMOs and factory farms and other things that would have previously been dismissed by middle-class suburbanites as just a bunch of wacko hippie crap. This newfound fascination with natural and authentic foods has a strong aesthetic dimension as well. As factory-made foods became associated with boring corporate conformity, embodied by their unnatural uniform appearance, there has been a corresponding rise in the sale of foods that look aggressively imperfect, rough, and handmade. Think of things like an artisanal sandwich made from thick slices of an uneven loaf of sourdough, rustic pizza cooked in a stone oven, or grocery stores like Whole Foods or Trader Joe's that have reinvented themselves in recent years as wholesome post-corporate places where you can go to buy nice, natural, authentic foods for your family. Like I said, a lot of this stuff has a pretense of being health conscious, with customers generally assuming that anything that looks like it was made in a kitchen is better for you than something that was made on a conveyor belt. But this isn't always the case. I mean, I've seen bakeries selling artisanal, made-from-scratch Pop-Tarts, and certainly the rise in cozy, independent coffee houses hasn't correlated with coffee getting any better for you. A lot of our fascination with food that looks a certain way just seems to be part of a larger cultural trend towards things that feel more sincere, personal, and warm, reflecting the increasing apathy that a lot of us have towards stuff that is too aggressively corporate or futuristic. For other people, however, the health dimension of food has taken on an urgency that goes beyond just wanting to eat better in some broad way. Beginning in the 1990s, more and more Americans began to identify as having a food allergy, probably in part because people are just eating a greater variety of foods than they used to, but also probably because the tests that we use to detect allergic reactions have become more convenient and common. Anyone who grew up in the lesser 30 era will certainly be familiar with the increasingly zero-tolerance attitude a lot of authority figures have developed towards peanuts, given that around 3% of Americans now